And obviously from then onwards downwards for a while, but I was very, very fortunate with that record. And I still sing that, Michael. I still do move it in my stage set. It's the first.
For more than 60 years, Cliff Richard has been more than a singer. He has been a companion to millions, through youth and aging, through heartbreak and celebration, through faith, doubt, and renewal. His voice didn't simply play in the background of people's lives. It became part of their emotional memory. And now, as time inevitably slows even the brightest stars, the idea of Cliff Richard saying goodbye feels deeply personal to fans across the world. This is not a tale of sudden tragedy or shocking headlines. It is something far more human. It is the story of a man standing at the far end of an extraordinary journey, looking back not with regret, but with gratitude. Born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940, Cliff Richard came of age at a time when Britain was still finding its post-war identity. Music was changing, youth culture was awakening, and the sound of rock and roll was crossing the Atlantic. When Cliff released Move It in 1958, it wasn't just a hit, it was a declaration. Suddenly, Britain had its own rock star. Unlike many of his peers, Cliff balanced rebellion with restraint. He was edgy without being destructive, charismatic without being scandalous. Parents approved, teenagers adored him, and the industry quickly realized he was something rare, a star with longevity. Few could have predicted that the young man with the clean smile would still be relevant more than half a century later. Most artists burn brightly and fade. Cliff Richard did something almost unheard of. He stayed. Through the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, he reinvented himself without abandoning who he was. While musical trends shifted wildly, Cliff adapted carefully. He moved from rock to pop, from mainstream hits to gospel-inspired work, always guided by personal conviction rather than desperation. This ability to evolve without erasing the past became one of his greatest strengths. Longevity comes at a price. A career that spans decades also means witnessing loss. Friends, collaborators, rivals, many gone too soon. Cliff Richard lived long enough to see entire eras rise and fall. That kind of perspective changes a person. As the years passed, interviews revealed a man increasingly reflective, less concerned with chart positions, more interested in meaning, less focused on proving relevance, more focused on inner peace. Aging in public is never easy. Every wrinkle, every pause, every absence becomes a headline. Fans begin to worry. The internet begins to speculate. And silence in today's world is often mistaken for tragedy. In recent years, Cliff Richard's reduced public presence has sparked concern among fans. Fewer tours, more time away from cameras, a quieter life. But what many forget is that Cliff earned the right to privacy, especially after enduring one of the most painful chapters of his life. The intense media scrutiny and legal battles he faced in the 2010s left scars. Though ultimately vindicated, the experience deeply affected his trust in public institutions and journalism. It taught him a harsh lesson. Fame does not protect you from harm. From that moment on, Cliff chose caution over exposure. Privacy became healing. Cliff Richard's Christian faith has long been a defining element of his life. In an industry often hostile to spiritual conviction, he never hid what mattered to him. Faith guided his choices. Faith grounded him during storms. Faith helped him forgive when bitterness would have been easier. When facing aging, uncertainty, and loss, faith offered him something rare in celebrity culture: peace with impermanence. To Cliff, saying goodbye is not frightening. It is simply another step. Not all farewells are announced. Some unfold quietly. A shorter tour here, a cancelled appearance there, a preference for studio work over sourdough. Tag lights. If Cliff Richard is stepping back, it is not because he has lost his voice, but because he has learned when to rest it. There is wisdom in knowing when enough is enough. And there is dignity in leaving while people still want more. The word tragic is often misused when discussing aging legends. It implies failure, decline, or defeat. But what is tragic about a man who lived fully, loved deeply, and gave joy to millions? A tragic story ends unfinished. Cliff Richard's story is complete. He achieved success without self-destruction. He endured fame without losing faith. He faced injustice without surrendering to bitterness. And he aged without desperation. That is not tragedy. That is triumph. Numbers tell one story. Over 250 million records sold worldwide, chart hits across 6 decades, one of the most successful British artists of all time, but numbers don't explain why people still care. Cliff Richard's true legacy lives in moments: a song played at a wedding, a hymn sung in church, a radio tune during a long drive, a memory shared between generations. That kind of impact cannot be erased by time. Outliving your era is both an honor and a burden. Cliff watched musical landscapes change completely. He saw younger artists rise who never knew a world without him. That can be isolating. But instead of resenting change, Cliff embraced it. He never demanded attention. He allowed relevance to come naturally, or not at all. There is humility in that. If Cliff Richard is preparing for a quieter chapter, it is not because he fears the stage, but because he understands life beyond it. A person is more than applause. At this stage, fulfillment comes from peace, reflection, and faith. From knowing you gave everything you had, and that it was enough. Not every goodbye needs a microphone. For fans, the idea of Cliff Richard leaving the public eye feels like losing a part of themselves. He has been there for so long that imagining a world without new music or appearances feels unnatural. But absence does not erase presence. His songs remain, his influence continues. His voice still lives wherever music is played. Goodbyes do not end relationships, they transform them. Cliff Richard does not owe the world explanations, announcements, or dramatic statements. His life speaks for itself. If he chooses silence, it is not secrecy, it is serenity. If he chooses rest, it is not weakness, it is wisdom. And if one day he chooses a final goodbye, it will not be tragic, it will be graceful. In music, silence after the final note is part of the composition. It allows the sound to settle, to echo, to be remembered. Cliff Richard's career is like that final note, still vibrating long after it is played. He gave the world joy, faith, resilience, and melody, and in return, he asks only for understanding. Goodbye does not mean gone. It means complete. And Cliff Richard's life, by any measure, has been exactly that.